If you cross, go back.
Why are you going? They told you to go inside. Why are you going again? They asked you to go inside. You are not going inside.
Because from 2023, I got an invitation to Nova Scotia. Why I was invited, I didn't really understand. But it was a conference of African universities studying reparations. And so in 2023, that's where my interest in the issue of reparations was ignited. And so he didn't know I was stepping on a stone when he came and said, "Can you write the foreword for my book on reparations?" Of course, I was gradually becoming a scholar myself on the issue of reparations, so I gladly accepted. And I had come back from that conference with loads and loads and loads of studies on reparations. So it made it very easy for me to just belt out that foreword for him. And when he came to Malabo to pre-launch the book, we ordered some copies and I very happily distributed it amongst my fellow presidents. What I have to admit to him is that, and if you landed your slave vessel with 20 to 30% loss, that was acceptable. And so if 36,000 slave voyages with almost close to 20 million people were carried across, and there was a loss, acceptable loss of 20 to 30%, then you are looking at deaths of between 3 and 4 million people who didn't get to the destination. And the horror of the slave trade was felt on both sides of the Atlantic. Families that lost their parents, both mothers and fathers. And so a lot of children were orphaned because their fathers and mothers were enslaved and forcibly removed. And so on the other side, relatives who were torn from their families forever and had to be auctioned, and there was a slave market. They tied you to a stake, and then look at your teeth to see if any of your teeth are falling out, you know, raise your armpits and all that. I mean, just like you buy a sheep in the market, and eventually if he decided to buy you, he took you, and like they always do, in order to enslave you completely, they change your name. And so that's how you can become Cassius Clay, because your slave owner was called Clay, and he named you Cassius. And yet your African name might have been something completely different. For those of you who have watched Roots, you remember Kunta Kinte, when they tried to force him to change his name. So these are a few more details of the slave trade and the issue of reparations. And I think that Kwesi's book is a very important contribution to the struggle for reparations, not only, like he said, in terms of monetary compensation, but also in terms of making people remember that history. There is something in history we call revisionism. Revisionism is when a government adopts a particular policy to try to rewrite the history according to how they want people to remember it. And I'm sorry to say, we saw a bit of revisionism in Ghana, where the issue of the founder of Ghana and the role of different political movements, and a new curriculum was written, and somebody's name was removed and left reduced to one sentence and things like that, that is also revisionism. But even in terms of the slave trade, there's revisionism going on in this country. And not in this country, in this world. I don't know how many of you have visited the Smithsonian in America. I have. And it is such a beautiful documentation of American history. It starts from the early period of America when it was only the Indians there, and they're beautiful exhibits. And then it moves from that period to when the migrants started coming from Ireland and other places, the Pilgrim Fathers and all of them, and settled on the West Coast. Greatly because we're here to honor the tireless scholarship and activism of Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr., who has gifted us this monumental work. The title of the book itself, Reparations, History, Struggle, Politics, and Law, captures the breadth of the challenge before us. Reparations are not simply about money, they're about truth, they're about justice, they're about healing, and the reordering of the global system that has for centuries been built on the exploitation of Africa and her people. In the foreword to this book, I reflected on how the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, and the structures of racial capitalism were not accidents of history. They were deliberate and coordinated systems of plunder supported by religious edicts, enforced by colonial armies, and legitimized by political institutions. Yet, as the author Kwesi Pratt Jr. eloquently shows, Africans did not passively endure. From Queen Nzinga to Yasantiwa, from the Mau Mau in Kenya to our Pan-African missionaries like Nkrumah and Cabral, our ancestors resisted. They fought with courage, intellect, and faith, leaving us a legacy of agency and resilience. Reparations are not charity, they are moral, legal, and political obligation. As I said recently in Canada, the world found the resources to rebuild Europe after World War II, to compensate Israel after the Holocaust, and to reconstruct Japan after the Hiroshima bomb. Yet the greatest crime against humanity, the enslavement of millions of Africans and the pillage of a continent, has never been fully addressed. Reparations must therefore go beyond financial compensation. They must restore historical memory. They must affirm spiritual dignity and drive systemic reforms of the global order. They must inspire curriculum changes in our schools, structural reforms in global trade and finance, and a reimagining of international governance. I speak here not only as the President of the Republic of Ghana, but also as the AU champion for reparations. The AU has rightly declared reparations as the theme of the decade, and I must say it was the theme for this year, 2025, January to 31st December. But when we went to Addis the last time, the decade from 2025 to 2035 has been declared by the AU as a decade of reparations. This is a call to action. We cannot continue to accept global double standards. Africa must demand fairness, equity, and justice. We must push for transforming the UN and other international institutions to reflect the true equality among nations. Kwesi's book is a decisive contribution to this global struggle. As I said, it is not an easy book. It unsettles you. It challenges, it demands, but it's also a hopeful book. It affirms that the reparation struggle is both urgent and transformative. On behalf of the people of Ghana, I salute Mr. Pratt for his scholarship, his courage, and his lifelong dedication to the Pan-African cause. The struggle for reparations is not merely about the past, It is about the future. It's about building a just world where Africa and her diaspora stand tall, not as victims of history, but architects of a new and equitable order. As we launch this vital work today, let us all recommit ourselves to this cause. Let us mobilize our youth, our women, our intellectuals and diaspora communities, and let us carry forward Nkrumah's vision and our forebears' sacrifice. Reparations are not a dream deferred, they are a demand whose time has come. And I thank you all for being part of this historic moment. May God bless Africa, may God bless Ghana, and I have the privilege to launch the book, Reparations, History, Struggle, Politics, and Law. Author, Kwesi Pratt, Jr. Why? Today no fireworks. They have some. So I think some wives. I can particularly testify. And because of the Caucasian physique was for flat, excuse my word, flat bottoms. And so this was seen as extraordinary that a woman should be so endowed at the posterior. And so, like we said, she was taken to Europe. She was South African, and she was taken to Europe by two people who promised her a good life and a lot of money if she would play along. And so they exhibited her in a cage, like an animal. And people will come and look at her. She would have to undress to show her posterior. And people will come and look at her and laugh and jeer and do everything. Eventually, that woman committed suicide. I mean, the humiliation, the degradation was too much to bear. He also gave the example of the woman from Albina, Monica Fernandez, they call her. In those days, when they baptized you, they discarded your native name. So we don't have on the record what her actual native name was, but she was baptized in the castle. And once you were baptized in the castle, you were supposed to live a pure Christian life. She was bitten by a cat, and the injury was festering. And so, I mean, like all Africans would do, she went to a herbalist to see if she could get a cure for the cat bite. And somebody went and reported her that she had gone to a fetish priest. And so they accused her of witchcraft. And they had a court in the castle. So the trial started in Elmina Castle. And the appellate body was in Portugal. And so at a point, the judiciary in the Elmina Castle decided to refer the case to the appellate body in Portugal. And so she was transported to Portugal to continue her trial. And so she was found guilty of witchcraft, but she was given a light sentence. And the sentence was Christian re-education. And so she had to undergo Christian re-education to cement her faith. And eventually she was discharged as being a reformed prisoner because she had imbibed the Christian ideology properly. But she wasn't brought back to Elmina. She was abandoned in Portugal until she died. So these are just individual examples.
Excellency, just before you go, sir, does your appointees, presidential staffers, ministers, do they have your permission to pledge and buy? Not close to 200,000, but 100,000.
They are not as rich as other ministers, unfortunately.
But at least they have permission. Please, once again, a round of applause for the president. Our first copy, one for 200,000. 200,000, and it's going to the President of the Republic of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama. Now let's come down and start. Nobody can give 200,000 unless the first gentleman of the land. But you... The moment is here. The vote has been finally launched. And at this point, everyone will need a copy. And so I'm bringing up the first 10 copies. Nice.
Guys, go back.
We haven't closed yet. We're only seeing of His Excellency. Then we can wrap up. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for being a part of the program. We are indeed grateful. Please, you can resume your seats.
Please. Back, please. Where are you going? You there? Amen.
So that's the president, the sitting president leaving. Yeah, he's done with what he needs to do. He's done with the launching, so he's departing from the book launch for the journalist Kwesi Pratt. Yeah, Kwesi Pratt. Yeah, Kwesi Pratt. I stand to be corrected. That's Kwesi Pratt.